There is no single thing that he has done in that entire career that is a greater or more consequential act of service and sacrifice to this country.
Girl, the American public were getting boring every night with your MSNBC show. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Go outside and talk to real people. She is so out of touch with ordinary people. It is amazing.
All right, folks, buckle up. This one's going to be intense. Ana Kasparian is once again stirring things up in the left-wing media sphere. And this time, her sights are set on Rachel Maddow. That's right, Ana is calling out the hypocrisy, fear-mongering, and growing disconnect among liberal elites like Maddow, who seem more focused on pushing a narrative than engaging with everyday Americans. For years, Maddow has reigned as MSNBC's leading voice, delivering constant warnings about Trump as the ultimate threat to democracy. But now, even voices on the left are starting to criticize her for being out of touch. And Ana, she's not holding back. From the chaos surrounding the 2024 election to questions about Biden's cognitive state and the media's failure to recognize the political reality, Kasparian is dropping some serious truth bombs.
Biden hasn't been disqualified from running for the presidency by anything having to do with any of his performance. It's just that it's going to be a tough fight. And so I think the backup plan is fight harder. The backup plan is make sure you win the Senate. The backup plan is people should volunteer earlier and do more and give more money and do all of those things.
That was MSNBC host Rachel Maddow back in June of 2024. And keep that in mind when you consider that Semaphore spoke to key media figures across digital, print, and legacy media, Republicans and Democrats, to discuss the things that they got wrong in 2024. And judging by that video you just watched, Rachel Maddow did get some things wrong. The question is, did she learn a damn thing about it? Well, rather than citing her real mistakes and terrible predictions, she actually ended up blaming her audience. So here's her statement to Semaphore. She said, "I thought people would be more unnerved by JD Vance. Less the cat lady thing and more the Americans are going to have to get over the dictator phobia Mencius Moldbug thing." Now, if you're unfamiliar with Mencius Moldbug, that's a pseudonym for Curtis Yarvin, and Curtis Yarvin is someone who's against liberal democracy and is in favor of a monarchy, though he seems to have a tough time defending that position. Cenk Uygur actually interviewed him about it, and it was embarrassing if you ask me. But on October 1st, Gallup released the following poll comparing voter ratings between Tim Walz, who was the VP pick for Kamala Harris, and JD Vance. And yeah, I mean, she is right that people didn't seem to fear JD Vance as much as she was hoping for. So at that point in time, in October of 2024, less than half of registered voters nationally had a positive view of Tim Walz or JD Vance. A combined 46% rate Walz as either an excellent or pretty good choice versus 41% for JD Vance. And despite Walz's slight lead on this measure, the two were equally likely to be rated as poor choices. Just under 4 in 10 voters see each as such. So she is right that people didn't buy into the fear-mongering about JD Vance as much as she hoped for, but to kind of pivot to what she believes her audience got wrong, or the Democratic voters got wrong, or voters in general got wrong, instead of taking ownership of the things she got wrong, is kind of amazing. But what do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, so I mean, look, even that quote is telling, because it's indecipherable to the average person.
Ana Kasparian, once a prominent voice in progressive media, is now stirring controversy as she openly criticizes mainstream liberal figures, most notably Rachel Maddow. This shift has sparked backlash among her usual audience, with many former allies struggling to reconcile her newfound skepticism with their expectations. Kasparian's critiques reflect a broader dissatisfaction within left-leaning media, where she challenges the echo chamber of unquestioned loyalty to the Democratic Party. Having previously championed progressive causes, Kasparian's move toward questioning establishment narratives has made her somewhat of an outlier among her peers. Whether this represents a genuine ideological shift or a strategic effort to distance herself from the declining credibility of left-wing media remains debated. At the core of Kasparian's criticism is Rachel Maddow, the MSNBC host known for her firm opposition to Donald Trump and the Republican Party. According to Kasparian, Maddow is disconnected from the everyday concerns of Americans. focusing instead on ideological battles rather than the economic and social issues that impact voters. A key point of contention is Maddow's reliance on fear-mongering, especially regarding Trump and J.D. Vance. Kasparian argues that instead of engaging with meaningful policy discussions, Maddow leans heavily on exaggerated warnings about authoritarianism and right-wing threats, ultimately failing to connect with ordinary people who are more concerned about inflation and economic stability than abstract threats to democracy. This critique reflects a wider disillusionment with mainstream media figures, who prioritize partisanship over honest political analysis.
Over dictatorphobia, Mencius Moblug thing. What are you talking about? So, look, I interviewed Curtis Yarderman, as Anna pointed out, so I know what she's talking about. The average person doesn't. And nobody knows about Curtis Yarwood. And yeah, he's comical and ridiculous, and that's why I'm worried about J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, and that's why I voted against them. But the average guy doesn't know that Curtis Yarwood is in favor of a monarchy, which is actually a dictatorship, which is what J.D. Vance was, the fact that J.D. Vance is in favor of that is problematic, etc. So, one, out of touch with what actual human beings are going through. They're worried about gas prices and food prices. They're not worried about Mencius Moldbug, who they've never heard of. And secondly, and even more importantly, she's saying, damn it, the fear-mongering didn't work.
Yeah, totally. That's exactly right. I mean, it's amazing that, look, I'm always amazed at the, I guess, allergic reaction to any self-reflection at all. It's okay to admit that you got things wrong. It's actually admirable when people admit, especially people in media who are supposed to be, sharing accurate information. It's okay to say, look, I got that wrong. In fact, we're going to give you examples of people who actually did take ownership, and I give them a lot of credit for that. It builds credibility when you're willing to admit when you've gotten something wrong. And by the way, remember, this is what she said when Joe Biden ultimately ended up dropping out of the presidential race.
Just thinking about the president right now, what a man, what a patriot. What an act of selfless devotion to your country. And he has been a phenomenal president. He ended the presidency of Donald Trump at one disastrous term. And he did it while being decent and civil and honorable.
The 2024 election and Joe Biden's role in it have become a major focus of this debate. The document offers a sharp critique of Biden's mental and physical fitness, arguing that the media deliberately downplayed concerns about his cognitive decline. According to this perspective, left-wing pundits dismissed legitimate worries about Biden's ability to serve, choosing instead to reassure the public that he was fully capable of defeating Trump. However, as the election cycle unfolded, it became increasingly evident that Biden was struggling, leaving the Democratic Party without a viable backup plan. This lack of foresight is seen as a significant failure of the liberal media, which refused to address growing concerns about Biden's viability as a candidate until it was too late. Beyond Biden himself, the document criticizes the broader left-wing media landscape for its handling of the 2024 election. It suggests that figures like Maddow were so confident that Biden would coast to victory that they overlooked early warning signs when reality set in, rather than taking responsibility for misjudging the political climate. These media personalities reportedly shifted blame onto voters, attributing Trump's success to factors such as uneducated white women or the supposed ignorance of the electorate, rather than acknowledging their own failure to present a compelling alternative. This tendency to blame the public instead of re-evaluating their messaging is portrayed as a fundamental flaw within the Democratic Party's media apparatus.
Occasionally boring at a time when boring was absolutely what we needed. And I just, his career of decades in public service as a senator and as a very successful vice president and as a phenomenally successful president, there is no single thing that he has done in that entire career that is a greater or more consequential act of service and sacrifice to this country.
Girl, the American public were getting boring every night with your MSNBC show. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Go outside and talk to real people. She is so out of touch with ordinary people. It is amazing.
Ultimately, the commentary in the document portrays the left-wing media landscape as increasingly out of touch and unwilling to admit its own mistakes. Kasparian's criticisms serve as a wake-up call, urging figures like Maddow to reflect on why their narratives have failed instead of repeating the same tired talking points. The mainstream media's reluctance to engage in honest self-criticism is seen as a key reason why figures like Trump continue to gain support despite relentless efforts to discredit them. As the political landscape evolves, the left media's inability to adapt is depicted as a growing liability with potentially lasting consequences for the Democratic Party. Whether Kasparian's pivot marks a broader ideological shift within progressive circles or remains an isolated case is still uncertain, but her bold challenge to the status quo is undeniably shaking up the conversation.